All right, welcome to another episode of the Rest and Recovery podcast. With me is Joseph Guzman. He is a former athlete himself and part of the Empowerment Sports Group, and as an agent and sports agent and advisor. And Joseph and I connected through the intrawebs some time ago and chatted, and here you are. So I know we've been trying to do this for a little while now, and so it's great to have you on.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to be on here. Yeah, sleep and recovery is so undervalued by so many people all over the world. But now it's starting to take notice, and there's just so many different devices and so many different things to help athletes with sleep. And I think it's very, very important. So I'll just give you a little bit of my background. I started playing baseball at a very young age in New York. My dad played baseball as well. He played with Sean Dunston and some other guys that play in the big leagues.
Oh, nice.
Travel ball in New York, and I just really loved the game and learned to really work hard at it, living there. And then when I was 15, I moved to Florida, and I loved it even more because there was no cold weather, so we were able to play
all year round. Yeah,
all year round, and that's when I really started to develop. I was definitely behind the eight ball when I came down here, just because of lack of games, lack of experience, just being outside. So you see the kids here in Florida at a young age, they're very, very advanced. And it's just because they are practicing all the time. They're playing, and there's no break, there's no snow, there's no distractions really. When the kids love the game down here, they just play all year round.
yeah.
And so, when I came down here, it was a challenge for sure. And I really had to work hard. Graduated high school. I had a scholarship to Tennessee Wesleyan College. After my first year, had some personal things. I had to come back with my mom and my family. So I came back to Florida, and then I ended up finishing up at Florida Memorial University. After that, I spent some time with the Kansas City Royals in the Dominican Republic. I played extended spring training with them down there. And in 2013, this was my junior year at Florida Memorial. That summer, they found a cyst the size of a golf ball underneath my brain.
Oh, wow.
So when that happened, I had some major league teams that I worked out for over that summer. That kind of scared me a little bit. And the doctor that I went to was actually a children's doctor. He was a specialist. He would do orthoscopic surgeries. So I went to him, and he checked all the boxes, made sure my eyes, my sinus, all these things were in order. And then he realized, like, we're going to have to go ahead and get it removed. So they went right in through here, popped my skull out like a cork, and they went in there, and they got to work. So after that, I missed my whole fall of my senior year at Florida Memorial University, just recovering. The only exercise I can do was walking for like 2 months because of the pressure. Any extra pressure to my brain, it could have collapsed like one side of my head here.
Oh, wow.
My skull. And it's interesting because when they pop that piece of your skull out, like that cork, it's like the size of a dime. They pop it out and they don't put it back, so it just grows back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's actually
did not know that.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they did it. But I had just excruciating migraines my whole junior year while I was playing. I did really well that year. I led the team in hitting, average, RBI, slugging percentage. And, I had major league teams watching me and things. And so it was really challenging to go through all of that, and have the surgery. And then I was just like, all right, you can't swing a bat. You can't go work out. You can't do any of these things.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a challenge. And that's when I realized, something I always look back on now, especially on this podcast, is just like rest and recovery, right? Like just having surgery and the importance of it. And there was times after my surgery that when I didn't rest, I'd get up and I'd be like lightheaded and all these different things. So after all that, after my senior year, I coached in the Valley League. I coached travel ball. I coached high school. And I really, I started to find a love for helping guys. I didn't have a whole lot of support besides my dad growing up. So in baseball, you have to have connections. You have to have people that can put you in front of the right people. And I feel like I missed out on a lot of those opportunities. So I started helping guys find colleges, and I became good at it. And then I started working with an agency, and then that agency that I was with, I had 18 guys drafted or signed that I recruited, and just found the love for it. And now I'm working with Empowerment Sports Group the last 2 years, and we're doing a really good job with our guys. We have 15 professional clients that we're helping right now, and some guys that are knocking on the door to the big leagues. So they're getting there. But it's just interesting. I'm always trying to learn and grow. Once COVID hit, I really started getting into listening to podcasts and reading more, and just understanding the importance of recovery and training and nutrition, and started reading a lot more as well, like I just mentioned. And I read a book, Intangibles. I actually had the pleasure of meeting that author, Joan Ryan, in San Francisco last year. She was nice enough to come out and meet me, and she just talked about, it was basically team chemistry. That book's about team chemistry. And in that book, she talked about, Barry Bonds. And Barry Bonds was like so ahead of his time, where he had like a massage chair in his locker. And
Oh, really? I didn't know
yeah,
he did all those things.
he did all these, quirky things. And back then they were like, look at this guy, like he's all he cares about is himself. And
Yeah.
and now, like, all the guys, they have their massage guns and they have all these different things. So it was really interesting reading that book and learning about Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is one of my favorite players, but just seeing how he was ahead, like with his nutrition, and he was very in tune with everything, very routine oriented. And so during, like I said, during that COVID time, learning, growing, I also went on a webinar with Dr. Christopher Winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had him on
And
the podcast. Well, I can't remember now. It wasn't too long ago, within the last 6 months.
yeah, I remember seeing that. So I was like, let me bring this up, because that kind of sparked my, interest with everything, and us connecting. So he started talking about all these different devices, and all these different tools for recovery. And so he started talking about the blue light blocking glasses. So I went on Amazon and I bought some of those Uvex yellow glasses, and I'm like wearing around my house. My wife thinks I'm nuts, because I'm like, I gotta see if this works. Like, remember, my players can use this, right?
Yeah.
And so I used them probably for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I would be tired. I'm like yawning, my eyes are getting watery and all that stuff. And I'm just like, wow, this really works. And then that just continued to spark interest. And I was like, I need to keep learning more about these things, and really getting into that. So maybe you could add on to that, and I can talk to you about,
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
see.
No. Well, I appreciate your story. I mean, I didn't realize the background and your own, physical recovery needs at that time. And, surgery is one thing, but just the importance of it and just pacing yourself. And that's part of the recovery process, is that rest, but also just knowing the appropriate load, right? You can get into that with fitness and strength or whatever, in the periodization that's needed when you work out. But the rest piece is equally important to the HIIT workout, to the 1 rep max, to, whatever that is. It's interesting that the Barry Bonds. I didn't know that. I remember hearing of things like, oh gosh, I'm having a senior moment. The wide receiver, Terrell Owens.
Yes, Tio.
He had, I think, an oxygen tank where in his bed it was closed
Uh,
and had pure oxygen fed into his bed. So when he slept, he was over oxygenated, and other things like that.
oh
Uh,
wow.
so I didn't realize Barry Bonds, which makes sense. He played to about 40. Uh,
Yeah,
so at that time too, that was rare that guys would get that long, even in baseball.
right.
Um, but what it'd be interesting to get your personal experience in your current state, seeing the different age groups, with young kids and sleep and recovery, and then what it's like for some of these guys. And I would presume some of the gals and some of the other sports, but um, burning the candle at both ends when they're not at the big leagues. In the single A, right? have the Bull Durham movie of the guys, sleeping around and or League of Their Own. They're taking buses from game to game, and it's like every other day is a game, sleeping from hotel to hotel. And I don't think it's all that much different nowadays either. But there's better opportunities to probably recover. But anyway, that was a long intro to what are you seeing in the space and the evolution?
Yeah, so kids at a younger age, they're more in tune with all these recovery things. The way they talk about, arm care and recovery and the lifts and all these different things, they're very advanced now. So they understand the importance, where like when I was, 15, we're just like, sleep, like what is
Yeah,
sleep?
yeah.
Like we
If
got to take
something
more
hurt,
swings.
you just rub something on it and you just kept going.
Right. So you just kind of go on. And but in pro ball, the high school kids, like I just said, they're more in tune. They kind of understand. And I've even seen where guys are getting screen protectors for their phones that are blue light blocking, so
That's
it's just
awesome.
like, yeah, it's just different, and it really, like me doing that experiment with those UVEX blue light blocking glasses, they really like made an impact. And I was like, this is insane, like people didn't even really think about this 10 years ago. Like it's all something that has kind of come up. But in pro ball, you see now a lot of the minor league levels will have 7-game sets. So they'll stay in the same place for 7 days. So
Okay.
so the major leagues and the minor leagues also understand that. They're like, well, why are we going to jump around? Let's just play 6 games here. You
So they
know,
are getting smarter with scheduling, and it's not like let's go from California to New York to Chicago to Florida.
right. So they're getting better with scheduling. And in the major leagues, they have rules when they have to fly across country as well. They
Mhm.
can't play later than 3 p.m. most of the time. If they have to travel cross country, there's certain rules for every region, but they're taking a lot of these things into account, where before they're like, oh, whatever, you didn't sleep. But I do have a really interesting story. Josh James is a kid that I played summer ball with here in South Florida. He's a South Florida kid. He went up with the Astros, made it to the big leagues. Really good friend of mine growing up, and we played together. He got drafted late. I want to say like late 20th round or early 30th round. And so he's pitching in the minor leagues, and the Astros are very advanced, and that's how they got to the World Series and all these things. They hired the guy from Nassau to come in and help them with the front office. So I guess that was part of like that whole movement. But my buddy Josh James, he had a sleep apnea,
Okay.
and the Astros found it. So I don't know if they were using like the Whoop bands or what it was or how they figured it out. So all of a sudden they figure this out, and he starts throwing like 98 to 100 miles an hour, and he's like moving through levels, and he makes it to the major league. So when he makes it to the major league, they talk about that story, and it's like, you know, 30 years ago they would have never found that. They would just say like, oh, this kid's not good.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting proper sleep.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, it's a testament to like I don't know what was he pitching before that. Clearly not 98 miles an hour.
right.
That recovery time, like the person didn't change, but his recovery did. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that they improved his sleep just a little bit, I'm assuming, who knows how much, but they clearly improved it. They diagnosed that, and then were able to apply some stuff that changed the trajectory of his career and probably life. Um,
Right.
he might have been stuck at the double A, triple A for it, and just maybe left sooner instead of going on to the major leagues. That shows like the impact.
Yeah. So it's really interesting when you hear things like that. You're like, wow, that really did make a huge impact on a guy. Just them being able to recognize that, diagnose it, and then go ahead and fix it. Um, and it's really, for me, it's really interesting. I love to hear these things because guys want to know these things. They want to learn more about how they can get better, how they can get an edge.
Yeah.
with their nutrition, with their recovery, with the meals they're eating, the supplements they're taking, all these things. And one thing that I found really interesting when Dr. Christopher Winter was talking was he was talking about there's like a window. Maybe you can explain it more. He said there's a window, and guys that miss that window from like 9 p.m. to like 1 a.m., it's detrimental to because of the growth hormones, or maybe you can
Yeah,
go into it more.
HGH. Yeah, yeah. Based on the timing of the sleep cycle, that the release of the human growth hormone, and like in our sleep cycle, it's like a 7-8 hour window. If you shortchange the front, you're not starting like there's a cycle. You're cutting off the cycle. It's not like you start like when you fall asleep that you start at that same cycle and you go through it and it's just shorter. It's you're cutting it off early or starting late. It's like starting at the anyway, so you kind of get the point, but so you're missing that window, and it's important to go through that full cycle to get the full benefit and recovery of the sleep. And that's probably what Dr. Winter was talking about, that with the HGH and the human growth hormone in the recovery process, that, I quoted as saying, sleep is where the work works, because you busted your ass in your weight room, pitching all those pitches or whatever you're doing, taking the balls, and then you're not allowing it to be applied to your body to get that growth out of it.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, I found that very interesting that guys, and in baseball, a lot of times it happens that they miss that window because the games are late, right? But getting to sleep early is something that I really tell my guys it's important. It's definitely important to get to sleep early and as early as they can, but they also need to like decompress,
Yeah.
so it's a combination. What do you recommend that they do, like if they do miss that cycle, like what's the best thing?
I mean, I wouldn't put too much, as long as it's not consistent, right? You don't want to also create, anxiety. No, I would say anxiety, but like, oh man, I didn't, get all upset, because then you're not going to sleep well for whatever time you do have available. And then
Right.
finding things that aren't necessarily screen time. I'm sure a lot of these younger folks are a little bit more in the gaming front.
Definitely.
So, if you can find either you mentioned your blue blockers, using them at night, so you're not, I call it blue light overdosing, because blue light's not bad per se, but it is artificial from the screens, and then it's too much for our bodies, and it's tricking us into thinking it's like midday, and so
Right.
you're never going to get into that deep sleep to get that full recovery. So finding, I guess, better alternatives for decompression, especially coming after a game, and you're exercising, running around, you're going to be a little amped up. So finding those modalities that will help, whether it's breath work is always a great tool that you don't have to pay for, and doing some down regulating breath work. I'm not much of a meditator, but if somebody does that, but that's kind of in line with the breath work, and anything that's going to kind of calm you down, read.
Right. Okay.
Those are the types of things that I would suggest, at least initially. And then you get to know the person, what are the likes, dislikes, and figure out, what you can do as an alternative. And gaming, maybe do it, but just again, the blue light, get some good yellow or amber glasses on, and a screen that's covered as well, and it might not be as impactful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have they created like blue light blocking for the screens now? Do you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know for the phones and tablets, I don't know about TVs and things of that nature. I haven't seen it, but yeah, so I don't know if they do or not, but you got the
Okay.
glasses for sure, um, that you could use.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. But yeah, I mean, the major leagues and the minor leagues have done a better job of scheduling. Um,
Well, I'm sure they see it more of an investment. Like where before, like you were joking around offline a little bit too, is, we grew up, it was like, no, just, suck it up and deal, or I'll sleep when I'm dead. And all
yeah.
these things is just like, you just kept going and going, and you wondered why people burn out or get injured. And that's the other aspect of like, the finding your why as to the motivation for these young guys and gals out in sports, that, injury prevention, because your motor skills are going to be sharper from the quality of sleep. So if it's not good quality sleep, you're not going to be as sharp. So you might be more prone to make an error or miss, the mark if you're a pitcher. If you throw out a fastball and it rises a little too high because you're not as crisp, that,
Right.
a dinger and you lose the game or something along those lines. So,
Yeah.
and you make a good point on the, especially in the pro leagues, but I think any everyday athlete, it turns into a game of inches after a while. The differentiation between when you get to that level is very little. And like you said, trying to find that edge to make that differentiation gets more and more important, uh, whether it's making a team or winning a game.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that I've noticed with all the superstars and in professional baseball. Like if you listen to the things that they do, I know when I was growing up, I'd watch like A-Rod's just his daily routine was just insane, and everything was very regimented and he ate, similar things every day. And those are the guys that end up, lasting longer and sticking around because they're very in tune with what they're doing, and
Yeah.
just every aspect of their recovery is important.
Yeah. I mean, and similar to your friend too, I mean, there's monetary value to that as well, for you individually and your family potentially. Like if you can extend your career, I mean, pro sports is a young man's game, young woman's game. But if you can play longer and produce value, that you're going to get paid better than most jobs out in the job market for at least an
Absolutely.
extended period of time.
Absolutely. That's
So when it comes to like the travel element, do you see these kids have struggles with traveling and things of that nature?
sometimes, I mean, sometimes they'll talk about it. Sometimes they're just used to it. Um, I do have a product that it's called Deep Sleep, um,
Yep.
the hoodies,
Yeah.
and I connected with Glenn, and
Glenn? Yeah.
yeah, couple guys started using them when they were traveling, and that definitely helped. I've even used it when I travel like across the country,
Awesome.
get some sleep, but it's hard for me to sleep on planes. I'm just too like amped up or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's
You
helped
and me
me.
both. I'm the same way. I'm the same
Yeah,
way.
I'm just
But
like awake, but things like that, like I found that, even if I sleep for 40 minutes, like it's useful,
yeah, hey, listen, a 20-minute power nap, man, can recharge a lot. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't had Glenn on the podcast. We did a Wellness Wednesday one time on Instagram Live, and I had an opportunity to meet with him in person at a conference. Ran into him, and
Okay.
so so yeah,
Yeah, he's a good
yeah,
dude. He's on to something there.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I,
Especially with the teams that like we're talking about that travel a lot.
mhm.
Baseball is like just completely different than any other sport because you play every day. It's not like football or you play a game once a week. You have your workouts, but you play your game once a week. Even soccer, you're not playing as frequently. I mean, the only one that really compares to is basketball, but
Mhm.
even basketball, you have your day in between, you know, day or 2 days in between. So baseball is one of those things where I think guys do need to get their sleep, even if it is at 20 minutes at any time, to try to recharge, recharge a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a marathon sport, right? I mean, it's not high intensity, but you've got those sprints and whatnot. But longevity is definitely part of the game. They're playing 160 games, um, 9 months of the year. I mean, that's a lot. That's
Yeah.
a lot of baseball.
Yep. Early mornings, I mean, a lot of the guys in the big leagues, if they have a 7 o'clock game, they're getting to the park at 11 or 12, and they're not leaving till 11 or 12, at night,
Yeah,
and that's if the game doesn't go extra innings and stuff like that, or they got to drive home. Some of them have their houses, within an hour or two, and they have to drive home and do all these things. So I think baseball now guys are really, even like 6 years ago, I feel like guys weren't like really so in tune with all this recovery stuff that's going on.
How
Um,
recent do you think, really, from your observation, like the last 2 or 3 years, 4 years?
yeah, I would say probably the last 4 years that I've seen the trend where guys are like, oh, I gotta get my sleep. I'm gonna be up early.
Yeah.
And it's, we have one arm in AAA right now, Jacob Kovic, and like sometimes we'll text him at like 8:30 or 9, and he's like doesn't answer because he's sleeping. I'm like, well, that makes
Good.
sense. Yeah, he was in big
Yeah.
league spring training this year, so um, he's up there, but he's very focused. He's like, what am I going to stay up for?
Yeah.
He has his wife, and even when he's not home, he's still he's focused. He's
Well, and,
focused.
and that's the big question that I think everyone's challenged with. That's what part of my challenge was at the time, was like somewhere along the way, I convinced myself I had to stay up late. You know what I mean? It was like, I don't know if it was just some youthful holdout, like,
Yeah, I'm the
or
same way. I'm the same. My wife's like, you're the only person I know that doesn't like sleep.
like, why am I staying up watching some stupid Netflix thing?
Right.
It produces zero value. I'm not gonna, or even staying up, like, I know we're talking about sports and baseball, but like as a fan, I have no influence on the game. So
Uh-huh.
me staying up till 12:30 in the morning isn't going to change the outcome
Right.
of my game, but it will change the outcome of my game, which is the next day on my job, right? So it's like we have to wrestle those priorities down and get them in proper perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for me, even, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and there was a time where she was waking up in the middle of the night, like every single night. And I was getting to bed early, like maybe like 9 o'clock. And she'd wake up probably like 1 or 2, and me and my wife would have to wrestle her to get her back to bed. But me sleeping from 9 to 1 and then like wrestling with her and then waking up in the morning, like I felt fine, surprisingly enough. But the old me, like a couple of years ago, I'd be like, oh, I'll just stay up until 1 and just
Yeah,
deal with her.
exactly. I had those exact
And
conversations like, oh, I know this one's probably going to get up soon. It's 11. I might as well stay up for another hour.
right.
You knucklehead.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a transition, and you see it, and now you're like, well, I actually felt okay, losing that gap in the middle, but I was sleeping earlier. Whereas when I was staying up, and then it was 1, and then I was going to bed, and it's 2, and waking up 6:30, I was feeling it. I wouldn't say it because I'm just the type of person like, well, if I'm tired, like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be tired. Like I can't change it right now. So
Yeah. But it cascades into everything,
right,
personal and professional, and you know, so yeah, it's definitely something to dial into. It's encouraging to hear from you though that this is starting to make headway into people's minds and actually applying it, and it's not a fight to get some of these guys to do what's necessary, and it's in their best interest.
right. And
And
there's still those struggles, especially with the Latin American kids. They're used to that, like, you know, family, like party, like atmosphere, like let's stay up and talk and do things. So, I think even those kids that are coming from other countries where the culture is just that way, like we're all going to get together and just hang out and talk. And I think even those kids are starting to realize like we need to get our sleep. Where before they were just like, whatever, I'm still gonna go 4 for 4. I rake, I do this, I do that, I'll throw 95, doesn't matter. But I think they're having more conversations with these guys to tell them like it
Mhm.
is important that you get your sleep. You're young now, but it'll catch up to you. And I know that there's like a sleep bank, right? Like if you don't get
Yeah, sleep
sleep,
debt. Yep.
and it just like keeps. And it's interesting because now that I know what it is, like sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I didn't sleep enough this week. Like it's like Friday, and I'm like, I'm so tired. Like I slept good
Yeah.
last night, or like from traveling or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, but it does make sense.
Well, and you have to account for the total thing that's happening in your life, and that's what I didn't do. But accounting for the impact of travel and other stressors that you might have on your life that will influence the sleep and the quality, and it's cyclical, right? It kind of bi-directional. I should say, where it plays into each other.
Right.
So it's good to hear that those kids are kind of starting to get that, and culturally, like you said, they're talking about it, probably player to player, and it's not the anomaly of a Barry Bonds, the only guy doing it, and then they shun him because they think he's weird.
Right.
Adds to his, the attitude most people probably had about him anyway as a player, where he was doing the right thing. It was self care for what he was doing, which was to be an excellent ball player. Uh,
Right.
and now it's like it's shifting. It sounds like it's going to shift the other way, where the guy staying up till 2 a.m. is the abnormal one, and I hope
Right.
it's the case.
Yeah. It definitely is. It's shifting. It for sure is shifting. Like now that's the abnormality, like you just said. Like now guys that are not doing the ice bath or those ice boots that they put
Yep,
on, like, oh hey, why didn't you do that, man? You should be doing this, or you should be doing
compression.
this for, yeah. So
Yeah,
now it's like the peer pressure is like going the opposite way. Is what I'm seeing from these guys. And they're like, hey, you didn't do your lift today. You didn't do your arm care recovery. Like, you need to go do it. Let's go.
yeah.
So it's
Get the
like
compression on your arm now, buddy.
exactly. So it's definitely shifting, and I'm seeing kids where they're like, no, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. It's not going to be good for me. I'm pitching on Saturday. And I'm like, wow, I like it
Yeah,
because that means they're focused, and it translates to life in general, even after baseball. Like those are the type of guys
exactly.
that that I represent that can get a job in professional baseball after. Like those guys that have good character, that work hard, that are regimented, like they'll find a job for them if the organization likes them, whether it's coaching or scouting or, you know, anything in that organization. So I just think all those things translate, but it's definitely good to see that guys are so in tune with their performance and the game. Like, how am I going to get better? I have to go to bed at 8 o'clock. All right, I'm going to bed at 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
It's, there's no argument with those guys that are just like mentally
they're dialed in.
they're dialed in for sure.
That's good.
Yeah,
Well, Joseph, I appreciate your time, man. I it's been a long time trying to get this to go, so it's awesome to finally chat and connect.
absolutely.
I like to close things out though with a couple questions, a little bit of a hot seat. So, what are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm reading How to Rewire the Vagus Nerve. I think that's what it's
Nice.
called. Yeah, really interesting. The last book I read was Be Like Amazon. Good short read. Interesting.
Okay,
Very interesting.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
What are you listening to, be it music or podcast?
Podcast. What's the most recent thing? I'll have to look here. Most recent podcast, I would say. Let me look here. Probably Ahead of the Curve. I like listening Ahead of the Curve.
Okay,
Jonathan Gelnar. Um, and
cool.
then Crush Performance. I forgot what the name of the podcast is Jeff Chrishell. He developed a sports drink for baseball,
Okay,
and it's specifically designed for like very low glycemic index and all these things, and it's like good for your brain while you're playing.
cool.
So he has a podcast. So I can send you the name.
Yeah, do that. I'm always interested. I'm also an over consumer of supplements. So I'm always interested in the different
Right.
uh, between that and drinks. But all right. And what is your go-to rest and recovery method?
I would just say the blue light blocking glasses for sure. That's like number one. And then we have like an air filter in my room, me and my
Hmm.
wife, and we leave it on. And that's helped that's helped me sleep a lot better since we've been
Awesome.
doing that.
Cool.
So just use the blue light blocking glasses. Um, sometimes I'll yell at my wife for turning on lights, like shut the light off, and things like that. She's like, oh my God, but
Turn into a vampire at night. Like,
yeah, yeah. I'm like, use your phone flashlight, but because I'm really like in tune with it. I'm like, this does have an effect. So I'm always just like testing things to like tell my players. Like if they ask me, like I need to know, what can help them or whatever. So I'm like the guinea pig for everything all the time.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Joseph, again, thanks for joining me, and it's great to hear one that someone like you is kind of helping these guys guide them along and encouraging them as an extra coach in their career in ways that are going to help. Not like you just said, not just in the sport, but I mean the sport of life too. So it's great to hear and being able to apply those lessons you've learned in your tenure to pay it forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important to help those guys coming up. All of our mistakes that we did, we don't want them to go through the same things. And
Exactly.
being an agent is just, it's really having really good relationships with your players. You have to have that. You have to be able to talk to them about anything. And sometimes they need to talk to somebody else besides their girlfriend or their wife or
Yeah.
a coach. They just need another person just to hear them out, whatever it is that's going on. And there's ups and downs for sure. So
Yeah. Value leadership there. Thanks, man. Take care.
all right, man, take care.